afternoon, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Halloween weekend in full swing. You got you got pumpkin patches to raid. You got parties to go to on Saturday. You got all kinds of things to do, and movies are, of course, a big part of the holiday season. I'm here to just talk about things that are going on right now, but more importantly, I'm here to talk specifically about this weekend's big opener, and that this weekend's big opener is this right here, Five Nights at Freddy's. It is both opening in theaters and streaming on Peacock. So if you have Peacock, you get it for free. But I just want to talk for a second about this fan base and about this movie. So I love horror films. Okay, goes without a shadow of a doubt that I love horror films. I am going to tell you a story about last night. So we're all sitting there. I had gone with Chris, who's been on the network, who's kind of like a good friend, and we went with our DM, and we saw other people that we knew. It was a big gaggle of people. I'm pushing 50, and I've got to tell you this movie, this Five Nights at Freddy's, is something I don't understand. And I had an epiphany last night that it's okay that I don't understand it. That these kids love this franchise, like if you're anywhere from 10 to 24 is the perfect range right now for this movie. Now it's PG-13, so you're gonna have to play it by ear. We have a 5 and a 7-year-old that do like Five Nights at Freddy's, and we play the games. Five Nights at Freddy's for kids is an entree point. It's an entry point into scares because it's jump scares. The game is a bunch of jump scares. I've played it on occasion. It has mind-numbingly hard levels where things are sneaking around you, and you have to kind of fix things or move things around, and it's tedious. But it's an entry level thing for kids in horror because basically there's no real violence. There's nothing to it except like when the characters catch you, that you get a live close up of like their face, and it's like "Arr!" and it makes a loud noise. And so it's an entry level position for kids in horror. The problem for the movie is, and this is where I'm coming from. I'm not a Five Nights at Freddy's fan. I don't know who the YouTubers are that are blogging about the games. I don't know the entire history of the franchise. I don't like these kids do that play. So coming into it, I felt out of place. And I'm going to tell you, when I feel that way, the way I look at it is the movie has to be sound. So if you go into Mario Brothers and you don't know all the gags, but you get them and whatever, the movie still has to work. It still has to have some sort of functioning piece. Sadly, Five Nights at Freddy's is not a functioning horror film, because my question to the filmmakers is, who's it for? Because if it's for people like me, the gore that's toned down to make it PG-13 needs to be R-rated. And if it's not for me, that's fine. If it's for kids, the gore that they have has to be toned down because it's still too hard for a kid to watch. I don't think, and there's a lot of talking. The movie's an hour and 50 minutes long. There's a subplot about abandonment issues, and about the fact that Mike, who's the person that becomes a security guard, played by Josh Hutcherson, is trying to save his sister from a mean aunt after their parents have both passed away. So there's a lot of talking with the child psychologist and with the aunt and there's a lot of talking in this movie. Way more talking than there are animatronic robots killing people. And while there are fine moments of animatronic violence of robots killing people, they move very slowly, and the gore is cut out. So even when they do get a good gory moment that sounds great, looks great, they cut away from the violence, they cut away from the blood, so to get that PG-13 rating. So my question is, who is this movie for? Because it's not for me. And I got the answer last night. The answer is it's for people that played the games. Because everybody that came out of it that was of a certain age last night loved it. And I was sitting there going, but it's not a good horror film. Yes, they all agreed that it's not a great horror film, but it's exactly the Five Nights at Freddy movie they wanted. Now, that's an interesting place to be because I still think you can have movies that are specifically for certain fan bases, but at the end of the day, they have to be what they say they're going to be. They have to be a good horror film or a well done horror film. And one of the people last night brought up Megan or whatever, and I said, yeah, but Megan was scary. There were scary points of Megan. There's 3 jump scares in Five Nights at Freddy's. Two of them work, and they're not even real jump scares. So it's kind of a frustrating film. It's one of those movies. I completely felt my age last night, and it was wild because I was sitting there going, the audience behind me was screaming, and I don't know who they were screaming about. And then they screamed again, and it was a cab driver. So it was the cab driver, I think, is a YouTuber that plays. There's a guy that's a waiter in a restaurant early in the film that I guess is a YouTuber as well. And so, I don't think it hits, like, it's really interesting also for the Five Nights at Freddy fans. From what I put together last night, it doesn't put all the pieces together that are necessarily part of the franchise. It kind of throws out, like, the people last night were talking about it as an alternate universe Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Like, it's not in any way or established as connected to the games or anything, and that they were moving pieces around and they were okay with it. But all I can tell you is what I see as somebody who goes to see horror films all the time and who's watching one horror film a day through October. It's not a good horror film. It's a mediocre horror film that is right square in the middle of being useless because it's not scary enough for adults. And there's very little scares. There's very little like horror, even though they have the animatronics and they who look good. They look great. Like the special effects, everything looks fine. But it's not shot particularly well. The director is a newer director, and her name is Emma Tammy. She's known for a couple things, but mostly stuff we haven't heard about, like a few TV shows and a podcast series. So I think she's one of, like, there's not a lot of tension, even though there's a ton of things that be tense about. Let's go to some comments and we'll see what I can say. So first off, good afternoon, friends. Good afternoon, Ken. Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon, Joe. 10 million Wednesday and yesterday. Yeah, it's huge. It's tracking in the $68 million range for the weekend. And all the people all the youngsters that I know from other movies that we go to, they were all going back with their friends 2 or 3 times this weekend. So it might end up higher than 68. That's where it's tracking. Boo, I've heard mixed reviews. It's if you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, I think everybody liked it. That's a Five Nights at Freddy's fan. But if you're not, if you're just going for a good horror film with animatronic, robots, you can watch Westworld, or you can watch Megan, or you can watch Willy's Wonderland, or any of these other movies that are significantly better than this movie. Let's see what else. I have in my Plex server will watch over the weekend. Yeah, it's available everywhere. JW is near 50. Really, you're so young looking. Thank you, Raven. God bless you. And pussies laugh out loud. Yes, there is a significant idea that when you're making this movie, who you're making it for. And the thing is, it's directly made for the Five Nights at Freddy's fans and basically nobody else. Because and it's very much the first time I've been to a movie in a while where I felt on the outside of being hip. So what this movie made me feel about myself is another, it might be another show entirely. Let's see. I don't know anything about the movie, the game at all. Anything after the 2000, I'm pretty much clueless. Well, Ken, you're gonna go in, you might watch it and like it, but there's not a lot here. I've heard it's too long, that they added too much story and not enough lore, and it's just not scary. They even jump scares work on. They're not. It is too long. It's an hour and 50 minutes. That's another thing. It's very talky for a movie about animatronic robots killing people. It is very talky. And it's the kind of movie where like the talky parts, they cause consternation. There's one or two parts where like there's a cop in the movie and she doesn't act very cop like, and she's very long talky parts, and they're not like, basically, doing weird stuff that just don't jibe with being a cop. She is a cop. She does stuff that it doesn't work in a framework of a horror film if you're a police officer, would be my way of saying. And it's not a plot thing. It's more just this weird. She does a couple weird things where you're just like, I don't know that a cop should do that. It may have been better for adults if it came out before the horror version of Banana Splits, and or that Nick Cage flick that were similar. Yeah, no, I don't, because it's not for us. Like, that's the thing. Like, when we go to most horror films, even the PG-13 ones, there's some stretch of being part of the horror, and even if you're with teens or whatever, you're in on the scares, you're in on the horror. You can respond to the audience. I was lost because the audience was cheering stuff that I didn't find appealing, and so part of my negative review is that maybe I just didn't get it. But then I was thinking about it, and it's like, it's just not a good horror film. Like, it's a, from what I understand from all the Five Nights at Freddy's fans, it's the perfect Five Nights at Freddy's movie, but it's not a good horror film, and it's being touted as a horror film on Halloween weekend in 2023. And don't get me wrong, I think the most interesting aspect is that it's tracking at $68 million, and it's available for streaming on Peacock for free, which means, and this is one of the best things about it that I can give it a compliment on, it means people are gathering their friends and going to the movie theaters, which I love. And it very much, like last night, there was a very much a passing of the torch for me, in that two people that I've been getting tickets with and bringing friends along with, and helping as younger adults, had done it for all their friends. So it's a great thing when movies can do that, and people want to be in the theater, they want to be with their friends, they want to see it all together, and they're not doing it at home streaming. They're doing it in a theater, buying popcorn, buying pizza, buying food, going in and just yipping and hollering and doing whatever. There have been some fights around the country and in the UK, so just be careful and don't be an asshole and try to have a good time at your movie. But this movie is very much a generational movie. But again, it's not scary. It's too long. The lore they choose isn't the lore that I was sold upon when I was told it could be epic. And it's very long. It's a very long movie, and there's not a lot of scares. And there's maybe one or two really good deaths. That's a hard thing to say, but we're in the spooky season. That's the truth. Let's see what else. Raven writes, are they hoping it'll be enough to get a sequel just to cash in on the gamers? Oh, they're definitely going to get a sequel. Like, that's the other problem with this movie, is it suffers from horror movie casting. And what I'm going to say about that is, there are people in the movie that are big enough stars, and this isn't a spoiler, but Mary Stuart Masterson is in the movie, Josh Henderson is in the movie, Piper Rubio plays Abby, who's the young girl. She's really good. And Matthew Lillard is in the movie. So there are very big stars in this movie, or at least genre stars. Mary Stuart Masterson was big in her day. Matthew Lillard's been in Scream, Scooby-Doo, all these different things. And at some point, the people in the cast dwindle, and there's only a set number of people left, and then that's just, you kind of can see where it's going. JW I didn't have a midlife crisis at the movie. I just had I had a distinct, this movie isn't for me. Like, usually when I go to and this is with horror films in general, or with any movies really, when we go to the movies, most movies are aimed squarely at hitting an audience and hitting everybody equally. But this movie relies very much on being a Five Nights at Freddy's fan and being into the lore and understanding when they change a storyline point that it's a massive thing for this version of the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, because it's a big change from the game. I don't know what that is, so it completely left me. I didn't have a midlife crisis. But it was the first time in a very long time where I felt I wasn't hip to what the movie was laying down for me, and that's okay, because at the end of the day, it still has to be a good horror film, and this isn't. So that's the rub. The rub is, if you're not into Five Nights at Freddy's, if you're not into the lore, if you don't know everything about every game or every book or books or whatever, that you can piece together what they've made into the movie and be able to understand it, there's not a lot of gore, there's not a lot of horror, there's not a lot of scary sequences. It's very talky. It's an hour and 50 minutes long. It has all of these things going against it as a real horror film. So if you don't have the Five Nights at Freddy's understanding, or if you're not a big fan of the franchise, or if you're not a big fan of the games, or if you don't know all the lore, then it just is a kind of a mediocre, substandard horror film, and not as good as a bunch of other movies that have delved into AI and animatronics. And that's the other side of it. Is it an animatronic movie, or is it a ghost story? And in that case, it's not as good as something, say, like The Black Phone. So that's the rub. That's the review of it. It's something I'm not part of. So if I'm not privy to it, it at least has to be a good horror film, and it at least has to stand on its own 2 feet. Has to deliver scares. Has to deliver a little bit of gore because we're PG-13. Has to deliver on all of those things: an interesting plot, solid decisions, by the characters. Um, it doesn't do that. Now, are the characters cool to look at? Yes. Giant animatronic bears and bunnies and foxes and chicas and cupcakes are fun to look at, but it's all very tedious, and it's lowest common denominator in the sense that the movie should be appealing to everyone, not just people who are obsessed with Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, that being said, it's going to make a killing, because the people that have played Five Nights at Freddy's and love Five Nights at Freddy's came out of it last night like it was the second. It was like, it's like a touchstone movie for us. So, like, I was trying to think back of a movie my parents didn't get, or a movie that and I couldn't come up with one where it was like, where the divide was so stark, right? Where the divide is so stark that only certain people know about everything involved in it. And I just think it's one of those alienating movies that I think regular people are going to get drawn into. Like, and I think whatever. I don't think I think for parents out there who are debating whether or not to show, I think it's too gory, although not scary, but too gory to show anybody under 10. And I think it's too talky to show anybody anywhere from 7 to 12, because there's a lot of stuff going on that's just fucking boring. And and the animatronics aren't in it nearly enough. I just realized I left up the JW had a midlife crisis, the movie for about 10 minutes. Sounds like Chopping Them Off in the 80s is better than this. Chopping Them Off in the 80s is better than this. Chopping Them Off in the 80s is fantastic. Highly underrated. Let's see. Nick Cage movies. Willy's Wonderland. I get it was a knockoff of these games, but it was actually a decent movie. Yes, it's a good horror film. And everybody, that's the thing about it. It doesn't have enough to be a great horror film on its own. It needs you to have the nostalgia for Five Nights at Freddy's. And coming out of it last night, I've played the game a couple times, not a lot, but I've played with my nephews, because again, it's a gateway horror thing. Coming out of it last night, there's nothing special about it, but everybody who had played the games, or everybody who really loves the franchise, thought it was the best thing they'd seen all year. They had such a blast at it. And it was weird to be on there. Usually I'm on the hip receiving end of things, and I was not last night. So it was wild. Matthew Lillard, Be Still My Heart. Yes. Lillard's one of the best things in the movie. Let's see what else. L D. Thank you. Raven, for saying that. I'm not, though. I'm young at heart. Anyway, they should at least get the jump scares right. And being Blumhouse, I'm kind of surprised. Yeah, they don't, and that's the major thing. So my review is, if you're a Five Nights at Freddy's fan, if your kid is anywhere from 7, I'd say 10 or younger, you have to be very careful because there is some gore, but not nearly enough. But there's enough stuff that maybe you get a nightmare or two out of it. I don't know. If you're the wheelhouse of this movie is anywhere from 12 to 23, and the 23-year-olds and the 23 and 20, anywhere from 23 to 17 last night, they were letting it go that it wasn't a good horror film and that it should have been gory and it should have been fun because they love the franchise so much. And that's the thing. Like, this movie is critic proof in a sense because the love for this franchise is so strong. And clearly setting up a sequel, clearly setting up all the different things that are going. There's one cut sequence after the credits. And then, whatever. Let's see. I'm guessing this is for the under 30. It's even worse than the under 30. It's 23 and under. So the 23-year-olds, 23 and under is about right because they played the game 10 years ago. So they're right about 13, 14 from 10 years ago. So it's right in that it's right in that perfect range where this game was created. And Scott Cawthon, Cawthon or whatever his name is, deserves a lot of credit. He wrote the screenplay. The screenplay is basic, it's generic, it's boring. But again, people are jumping up and down. So I'm sorry I can't say the Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm sorry I can't say that the Magic Bear and his friends are great this weekend. But if you have a Five Nights at Freddy's fan in your house, they're going to want to see it with all their friends. They're going to, like, in a group setting, in a theater where everybody's hooting and hollering and having a good time. That's what happened last night. I just wasn't part of it. So it was a weird feeling. I also, really quick, I have about 6 minutes left because I'm trying to do these at a half-hour pace. Five Nights at Freddy's isn't great, but I have been watching some movies just as a catch-up, and I want to give everybody a bonus movie today. If you have Amazon Prime, I'm going to really go out and say you need to watch this movie called The Burial. It is Tommy Lee Jones, Jamie Foxx. It is stupendous. It is exactly what we need right now. It is about a very, very audacious lawyer, played by Jamie Foxx, who's a part preacher. He's been on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It's based on a true story. And basically, it's him and Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy Lee Jones plays an elderly, in his 70s, proprietor of funeral homes in the state of Mississippi. And basically, it revolves around a court case and contracts where basically this giant corporation at some point was trying to buy up all of the smaller funeral homes throughout the country because of the growing dying ages of baby boomers, because there's about 51 million baby boomers. This movie takes place in 95, and it's a really fun, fascinating. It's got racial overtones. It's really well done. It's got a great court case at the center of it. It's a contract case, but it's about so much bigger, about taking advantage of people when they're down. Tommy Jones plays an aging funeral home proprietor who basically starts to lose his license. He goes in to try to sell some funeral homes to this giant corporation, and they basically stall the contract in an effort to bankrupt him. And he hires Jamie Foxx, who's this master orator / Johnny Cochran type is the best way to describe it. And it's funny and it's warm and it shows that we're all from the same place. And it shows that, everybody from different backgrounds can get together. And what is right is what is right, and what is wrong is what is wrong. And so I can't recommend it more highly enough. Great performances. You don't think Tommy Lee Jones and Jamie Foxx would work well together, but Maggie Betts has done a great job directing. It's got a tense, court trial to it. It's well done. It's got some nice bit players in the background, Alan Ruck and a couple other people. If you have Amazon Prime, you're doing yourself a disservice not watching it. Really good. And that's basically where I'm at for this Halloween weekend. We have no show on Monday and no show on Tuesday. No Generation Movie on Monday. No Loud Nerdy on Tuesday. Which, if you haven't heard, Loud Nerdy is moving to the Indie Escape Network on Tuesday, November 7th. Super excited about that. And we're happy to be part of everybody here at the Indie Escape Network. So have a great Halloween. I always celebrate Halloween by watching Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, Halloween 78, Halloween 81, which is Halloween 281. Don't watch the Rob Zombie versions. Watch good versions. I want everybody to have a happy and safe Halloween. Let's get some comments before I go. Aside from Raven saying old. Let's see. Ooh. At least it's taking kids to the movies. Yes, that's the thing. That's an interesting side note to it. I mean, with the way this movie is tracking, the numbers are astounding. Tracking at 68, which means it's the biggest opening weekend for a horror pick this year, higher than Scream 6. Third biggest opening ever for a video game movie, Super Mario Brothers 146 and Sonic at 72. Second biggest Blumhouse opening ever behind 2018's Halloween reboot. So it's crazy. And it's going to be on everybody's tongue this weekend. So it's just, you can watch it and check it out. Sounds interesting. See if it's somewhere. I'll check it out. Yeah, the burial is really good. Boo. I don't know what the boo is for. And then Heather Graham's Suitable Flesh. Yeah, Suitable Flesh is also coming out this week. And great review. Thank you, Joe Ridgely. I want to thank everybody. I want everybody to have a happy, safe, fun Halloween. Watch out for Michael Myers. Don't be a babysitter. Be smart. If you do, don't go out and check the car or leave your laundry or leave the doors open. Have a happy and safe Halloween. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks on Generation Movie, where we don't yet know what it's going to be, but we think it's going to be this. Where's it at? The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, Deadly Horrors, Dragon Thrills, the first Kung Fu horror spectacular, starring Peter Cushing, and just it could be a blast. As part of our the last part of our Hammer Horror, or we may swing into our November, December holiday spectacular, where we have movies on that are starting to be put on a list, where we're checking it twice and trying to find out who's going to get the Generation Movie treatment and be naughty or nice this year. But thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great weekend. Everybody be safe. Thank you for joining us. And go see a movie or watch a horror film. Cobweb is another one on Hulu. Fantastic. Really good. Talk to you soon. Have a great weekend. Happy Halloween.